What is up, guys? Welcome to the official, very, very first episode of Honor Among Thieves podcast. Your host, as always, Nelson Rodriguez Jr. Today, bringing you a very, very special episode to inaugurate our show. We're going to start with episode 0. And episode 0 is our precursor to actually starting the show. And we're going to start with an in-depth interview on myself so you can get to know me, my personal story. This is a 2-hour podcast. I've never done a 2-hour podcast in my entire life. We go in depth into many different subjects, many different things that I've actually never talked about. Janel Baez, I brought her in to interview me. Great interviewing skills. She's a fantastic journalist. Appreciate her for coming on, taking time out of her schedule to do this project with me. I'm really excited to show this to you guys. It took a lot of hard work, dedication, effort, and I'm excited to share a lot of different parts of my story that I've never been out. Everything from my childhood to my criminal life to prison to where I'm at now. It goes deep. It goes pretty deep. So, without further ado, episode 0 of Honor Among Thieves. So say goodnight to the bad guy.
You looking at the bad guy. This the last time that you ever see a bad guy like me. You don't have the guts to be who you want to be.
Nelson, thank you for being here today. I'm extremely excited to learn your story. I heard it's extremely interesting, and I know that you've endured certain things. But before we get into your story and, what it is that made you who you are today, and congratulations on Honor Among Thieves, what led you to rebrand your entire podcast?
It's something I've been meaning to do for a while. I had a realization once I got sentenced and I actually went into prison. I heard so many stories that I kind of realized, like, holy shit, my purpose on this planet is to bring these stories to the world. Like, no, people need to hear these things that have happened to these people.
What was your brand prior to Honor Among Thieves?
The Montana Method, which it's actually the first book I wrote. It's still out there.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep.
Okay. And your book, where can people buy that?
On Amazon. You can get it. Yep.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about your book. What is it about? What is it that you contributed that book to?
Well, that book was basically a memoir to that version of me at the time of my life. I kind of had this daunting feeling that version of me was going to die and another version of me was going to come out of this whole thing. I don't know whether it was going to be a better or worse version of me, but I knew it was going to be different. So I kind of...
Did you write that book before prison?
Mm-hmm. I wrote it after I got indicted, yeah. While I was out on bail.
Okay. So let's get into it. Tell me about your childhood. Talk to me about your parents. What did your life look like?
Sure. So I'm Cuban on both sides, Cuban American. I was raised very Cuban. Spanish is my first language. Almost no one in my family speaks English. I was a translator for a lot of my family members that would always have me reading like mail they would get.
But you were born in Miami.
Born and raised in Miami, yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised in Miami. So my father actually came in 1988. He crossed the Mexican border. He left Cuba with a fake Venezuelan passport to Panama, stayed in Panama a little while, and then he got to Mexico and crossed the border where my aunt was waiting for him. And then my mom, the reason originally I had chosen the Montana Method as like my brand, and I'm a big Scarface fan. Everybody knows I'm always wearing like Scarface t-shirts and all that, was because my mother actually came on in the Mario boat lift in 1980. So the Scarface story was very personal to me because whenever I saw that scene in the tents under the highway, I saw my mother. And my mother had always told me the story of how she got here, how she remembers getting on this boat with all these really strange, scary-looking people, how to this day she can't eat apples because they gave her apples to eat on the boat, and like she got seasick. And I remember, so I can recite the stories, like because so many times my mom told me. So, she came over on the boat with my grandfather. She was the first of almost my entire family to leave Cuba. And they took her to one of those refugee areas, and she was there for a few days. Like, she really lived that life, So it's very personal to me.
Camp.
Yeah. So that whole Scarface origin story, that's why it's really personal to me, because it's like, wow.
It derived from there, from your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the boat that she came on was El Mariel?
Yeah, that was one of the boats that came in El Mariel, in the Maria boat lift, yeah.
Okay. And your father, where was he in this whole trajectory?
My father at that time was still in Cuba. My father's 5 years older than my mother. My mother came when she was about 8 years old, so he would have been about 12, 13. My father grew up, for the most part, considering how bad the situation was in Cuba, he wasn't that, I mean, he was poor, like everybody was poor, but he was able to eat. He had food. My grandfather finagled his way into the right circles and always had food on the table and always had a decent job where he had connections and took care of his family, that kind of thing. And my grandmother was a great, like, homemaker. You know, she was a very good mother to her kids. She kind of had the whole mama's boy thing going on with my mother, with my father and my uncle. That's how they grew up. You know, my father was
a very typical Cuban mother.
Overbearing, yeah.
You know, and overly giving to the sons.
Overly nurturing, yes. And all that stuff, yeah. So that's basically how he grew up. He's told me a lot of stories of how Cuba was back in the day. It was very different in the 80s. You know, the Soviets still kind of had control of Cuba. So it was basically a Russian colony. A lot of money was coming in from the Soviets. So it was nowhere near as bad as it is now, even though it was still a totalitarian state and all that stuff. He describes an interesting version of what Cuba was. It was like this kind of like cool
playground
childhood. Yeah, like that's how he grew up, and he tells this interesting version of Cuba that doesn't exist anymore. Was your father
involved in politics, or was he political?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Nobody. So my great-grandfather actually was a political prisoner. He was supposedly involved in some sort of plot to kill Fidel, and they actually threw him in jail. And my great-grandfather had 14 kids. My grandmother's the oldest of 14 kids. So they actually went through a lot of struggles, and it was not good because he was gone and he was kind of the provider. They had to fend for themselves for a while, and it was very ugly. My grandma and my aunts and uncles, they tell me stories about it all the time. It was pretty sad. Yeah.
What about your father? You know, tell me a little bit about how, did he have any habits? What kind of person was he? Was he a very meritorious person, a person of morals and ethics?
Well, my father, I remember him being quite the virtuous guy when I was a kid. So much so that I would argue that the earliest influence I'd have of my straight edge lifestyle now was kind of my father. When I was a kid, I refused to touch alcohol and drugs because I always had the example of my father to look up to, like, wow, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do the drugs. That's so cool, amazing. You know? Mm-hmm. So when I was very young, he was a very good example for me. Mm-hmm. Later on, I came to find out that they were... A lot of my family members were heavily involved in the drug business. So, you know.
Okay, there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
They just did a very good job at concealing it from you, right?
I mean, I was a kid, you know. Right. I didn't know any difference, you know. We were going to Disneyland every other weekend, which was cool. But I didn't understand, like, why or how they got the means for it, you know. So,
right. It
is what it is. So
wait, let me retract a little bit here. So when you guys finally moved to the United States, to Miami... You were here living with your mom, and your father came after.
Well, no, that was before I was born.
Okay.
My mother came in Mariel. My father came in 88. I was born in 1992.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my sister was born in 91.
When you were born, and they were already both here?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. And tell me about your story, you know, once you became a teenager. What kind of influences did you have around you? What was going on at home as a teenager?
Well, as a teenager, I was very disassociated to reality in many ways. I had completely become disillusioned with my father at that point. My father and my mother got divorced when I was about 12. So...
Why did they get divorced? What kind of issues were they having?
Their personalities don't mesh well. They're two very strong personalities. Although I do lean a little bit more towards my mother's side of things because my father was very irresponsible, didn't take accountability for his actions.
He didn't lead very well.
No, he was very absent. she'd catch him lying, and he's had an issue throughout his aside from that, he's just been kind of like a compulsive liar throughout his life, and just many issues that doesn't accept responsibility, things like that. And my mother, the reason kind of things blew up is because she had a very bad temper. Like, my mother was very hot-headed when she was younger, so it just wasn't a good mix of, and then my mother would also take things out of proportion, and she was very opinionated. She still is, but she's just in her older age, she's calmed down a little bit. So it was just a Molotov cocktail. Ever since I was really little, they'd get into fights, and I'd hear them arguing all the time, and it wasn't really ideal. The only reason it wasn't too bad was because my dad was a truck driver, so he'd be out of the house 5 to 6 days a week. So I didn't have to deal with it like 7 days a week. But when I did have to deal with it, it was too much. There was more than one occasion where my dad left and went to go live with his mom, my grandmother, and he wouldn't come back for months at a time, which it was kind of like a trial on the divorce, right? And I was like, I'd prefer this than the fighting in the house, And then the thing is, my sister, I have an older sister. She's a year and 8 months older than me. She was never really home. She was always like the kid that was with her aunt or her grandma or her cousin. She was always out and about. So I saw the brunt of everything when I was a kid,
and I'm sure it was very overwhelming. Those things have an impact, on our psychology and our behavior patterns. And I mean, if we're the type of people that don't do introspection and we don't spend time with ourselves to kind of like identify the issue so that then we can course correct our behaviors for the future with our loved ones. But okay, so as a teenager, you experienced that type of turbulence and, that animosity in your household, and
really throughout my childhood, not even just but yeah.
In your childhood and in your teen years. Okay. And after your teen years, did you graduate from the university? After high school, what did you do? What kind of person were you in high school?
Well, leading up to high school, my mother had met my stepfather at that point, so life was very different. My mother, before she met my stepfather, after she got divorced from my dad, it was rough. Single mom. My dad wasn't really in the picture at the time. Again, irresponsible, didn't really take responsibility for his actions, wasn't really present. Would lie often about being present. He was the kind of guy that would tell us, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there at 8:00. Pack your bags, be ready." 8:30 rolls around, 9 p.m., 10 midnight. He doesn't show up. So. I actually kind of accepted that pretty early, and I was like, it is what it is. He is who he is. I'm not angry at it. It's just whatever. My sister, though, took it pretty bad, unfortunately. So she recently kind of like, we had a conversation recently where she's like, I finally get it.
Well, you seem to be extremely emotionally balanced.
At this point in my life, yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely apparent. So, okay, so in high school then, what kind of behaviors did you develop? What kind of person were you?
I didn't really like people.
Okay.
I had a small circle of friends that I dealt with here and there. I didn't really bring friends home. I didn't stay over much at friends' houses. I just kind of liked being in my own world. I didn't really need to feel the need to associate with people. One person that was a pretty good influence on me at the time, and I kind of led up until it led up to my stepfather, was my cousin Louis, who actually in the introduction of the book, I talk about the story my parents split up, like the story of my parents splitting up, and like the night they decided to get a divorce. In typical fashion, they were fighting. My mom wasn't home at the time for whatever reason. She was working or something, and I was home with my dad. My dad pulls up to this payphone, and like back then when we didn't have cell phones, so he calls my mom on this payphone. He makes me ask my mom where she is, which, looking back, again, it's an ongoing thing with my father. I'm on the phone and I'm like, bro, why did you make me call? Like, why are you making me talk to my mom? If you want to know where she is, just ask her where she is. But those are the games my dad would play.
Yeah, it was immature.
It's stupid, dumb. So anyway, my mom blows up on the phone. We kind of just hang up. We go back home. We wait, and we just wait for her to go home. It's like maybe 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and in the middle of the night. She gets home, the door bursts open, he runs out, they start fighting. I hear glass breaking and like them throwing things. And at this point, I just don't want to go outside because I don't want to see it. And I'm kind of just waiting in my room. And then I hear one of them call my name. I think it was my mom. And I go outside and they immediately stop fighting. So mentally, I'm trying to think of like, okay, how can I stop this? Because I don't want to deal with this right now. So my dad was leaving, and my dad was like, all right, let's go. And I could have fought him and stayed and whatever, but that would have just ensued more arguing. So for the sake of ending the confrontation and for the sake of my mother's safety, and kind of both of their safeties really, I left with him. And thank God also my cousin was there that night, who later broke into my house and stole all my stuff. I'll tell you about that later.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm in that car. I'm in this like black 98 Camaro. And it was like a 30-minute car ride to my grandma's house. And I don't remember anything anybody said. And they talked the whole time. The entire time my cousin and my dad are going back and forth talking, arguing. I don't remember a word. All I could hear is like
mumbling.
And
You were processing things, I'm sure, like disassociating, you know, because it sounds pretty wild, you know, the arguments they would have.
Yeah.
But what is it about people around that time in high school that you didn't like?
I saw people as a liability, kind of.
Okay. Elaborate on that.
At that point in my life, after my parents got divorced, I felt like my father was someone I really looked up to, and he disappointed me. So I didn't want to be disappointed anymore. I was like, I don't, you know, other people are eventually going to disappoint me. It looks like, you know, the one guy I thought I could depend on my whole life seems like he's not too dependable. So in order to just avoid situations like this, I'm not really going to get too deep into these relationships. Yeah. Again, I've had close friends. I had a handful of people I called friends, but not many, you know. Okay. So leading up to high school, my mother, you know, like I said, my cousin gets involved that night. My cousin Louis, long story short. And he was a good influence on me because I didn't have any male role models per se in my life.
How much older was he than you?
I was 12 and he was like 18, 17, so about 5 years older than me.
Okay.
But he was very wild for a 17-year-old kid, like getting into trouble.
Do you think that impacted you in some way?
No, I knew that I shouldn't be doing that. But it did have a positive impact on me because I had kind of like an older brother in the house. He kept, you know, he was really funny and he was charismatic and he was a womanizer. Like he had kind of like some qualities that men, I think, find attractive in other men or find positive or uplifting in other men. So for the most part, it was great having him around. You know, he was a really good influence. The other stuff he was up to, the smoking weed and hanging out with friends and getting into trouble and getting into fights, like that kind of stuff, I just wasn't interested in at that time of my life. Like,
good. So it really didn't influence you.
No, but he was good to have around, you know. And then you might credit him with like my whole fascination with the gangster movies, you know, that I've had my entire life. So I saw Scarface for the first time because of him and all that.
Your cousin kind of had a small impact in your fascination with the Machiavellian type of mindset and lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't go as far to say as like Machiavellian, but just my fascination with the darker side of life.
Okay.
Like finding odd characters in life that really don't fit in or society kind of labels as bad and finding the qualities within them that actually kind of make them achieve.
Starlight.
Yeah. Make them like superhuman.
Okay,
you know?
So after high school, did you go to the university? Did you go to college?
So high school, so that was leading up to high school. So when I actually get into high school, my mother meets my stepfather at that point. My dad's pretty much completely out of the picture during this part of my life, so he's just not coming over. My stepfather and my mom get together. My stepfather, just to give you an idea of who he is, he had just done 6 years in federal prison. He was a notorious, like, career criminal, gangster. Anyone who knew him did not fuck with him. If they knew him, they were either like a business partner. All his businesses were illegal. He did no legal business whatsoever. But he was a guy to be respected, a guy to be feared. So again, it was strange how it all kind of culminated at that time. These kind of like darker alpha male characters came into my life. And somehow I could always differentiate, all right, don't do that. But you know what? Men respect him when he talks. People don't try to steal from him. You know? Did
he ever do time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He had just done 6 years when he met my mother.
Okay.
He was fresh out. of federal prison. Then
He reverted back to the lifestyle.
almost immediately, yeah, pretty much.
Okay, he learned nothing.
No, he had no intention of changing, or that's who he was, and
Is he a free man, or is he still in prison to this day?
he's doing his third bid now. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so that happened. That was occurring in your life around that time. And after high school, how was your time in high school? Were you a straight A student? Were you a D student?
I always got really good grades.
Okay.
I always got really good grades. I didn't have to try. I got A's and B's without studying. I never studied for a test. I did homework like half the time.
Nice. Natural intelligence.
Yeah. Schoolwork, it didn't make sense for me to fail and have to repeat like grade school and have to repeat grades. So that's why I never did bad. But I didn't put much effort into it because I didn't really need to.
Were you inspired by the college life or the university life?
Not really.
Okay, so what did you do after high school?
I always saw school as kind of like going through the motions. I always saw school as sort of a daycare. It was kind of something to keep me entertained while adults had to go live their lives. I never really saw any value in it. I did see the value in the relationships you built. More towards the middle of high school, I start making friends, like good friends, and I started learning the value of relationships at that point. Because because relationships, friendship, those friends got me through hard times, which leads up to this. Halfway through high school, I'm about 16, 15. My great-grandmother passes away, which my great-grandmother in my family was like our matriarch. She brought a lot of us over from Cuba. She was like the leader in our family. So she passes away, my mom's grandma. In the same year, my stepfather gets arrested and goes to prison. So he basically was involved in an undercover sting operation where an informant for the federal agents had came in, had been talking to him for months about this raid. They were going to go raid this drug house and steal all these drugs. That led up to build a pretty big entrapment federal case on him. And he got sentenced to 18 years in federal prison.
Wow.
So
he's still there.
Well, he ended up getting out in 9 on that bid.
Okay.
But, so yeah, he gets sentenced. He goes away. We go into a foreclosure. We lose our house. We have 2 car repossessions. We end up having to move into a trailer. At the time, we were living in Carroll City, but we lived in an all right neighborhood, and then we end up moving into a trailer park in Carroll City that's like not really all that good. And that, I remember that being like...
What grade were you in at this point?
I was 15, turning 16, so I must have been a sophomore.
Oh, sophomore? Okay.
Maybe, yeah, sophomore. That was... My great-grandmother died in March of that year, so yeah, I was 15.
Okay.
I was 15. And then, yeah, that year was rough. That was like 08. So imagine. Then you had the crash, the economic crash and all that.
Despite all the things that you were facing in that moment of your life, you were still doing pretty excellent scholastically in school.
Yeah, that was never hard for me. It was never difficult. Never really. Yeah.
That's not common. Most people,
No.
they default to terrible grades and they start acting up at school. So that says a lot about your character or about your mindset.
I mean, I hated school. So instead of like doing bad, I was like, man, the better I do, the faster I get out of here.
Yes.
So that's why I kept getting good grades. And plus, it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense for me to fall off, So I only remember one time, and I don't know how she found out. There was one time during that year, or like right after all that happened, that the school counselor, I've never said this to anybody, the school counselor called me in, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "What do you mean, am I okay?" "Well, like, what's going on? Like, talk to me." I was like, "Yeah, well, my great grandma just died, and we went to foreclosure. My stepfather." She's like, "Man, that's a lot. That's a lot to go through. You that's why I called you in. Like, I don't know specifically what you were going through, but I had heard some things and this and that." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm all right. I'll hang in there,
Major resilience that you had.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because it's not typical for somebody to be so grounded when they're going through so much in their life, through so much adversity, especially when you're young, because you're just starting to experience life. You're just starting to experience what reality is. you know, and the different things and the way to manage those circumstances. So the fact that you weren't, you know, you didn't really retaliate in any way, you weren't rebellious or show out in any way, it says a lot, you know. It just shows a certain level of responsibility and maturity. So, I mean, I think that's extremely commendable. Okay, so after high school, you graduate, you do fine. What do you do after high school? What is the plan?
So about halfway, say more or less halfway through my senior year, my mom actually decides to move to West Palm Beach. And
Alone?
well, she had given me the option of going with her.
Okay.
But I'm halfway through senior year of high school. I'm not going to transfer high schools in the middle of my senior year. I said, no, I want to finish school. And I basically moved out into an efficiency at my aunt's house. And I was already, I wasn't even 18 years old and I was already living on my own. So I was working full time at McDonald's from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 p.m. I'd get home around midnight or 1 in the morning every day. Wake up at 5 in the morning the next day to go to school, be at school by like 7, get out of school at 2:30, you know, that kind of cycle. My life sucked. I mean, I got paid dog shit and I had to work, you know, all the time. And I was, at that point is when a little bit of the bitterness kind of kicks in.
Any moment did you feel depression?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That was the first real time I would say I kind of dealt with depression and dealt with that kind of demon. For me, it was really like, I was thankful. I thought it was cool on one hand to have as much freedom as I did as 17. Because, you know, obviously with some of my friends, it was like, oh yeah, no, I have to be home by this time or whatever they would, those kind of conversations, obviously, because you're still living with your parents. And with me, it was like, oh, I don't have to deal with that. That's cool. But on the other hand, growing up that fast, I mean, it was a reoccurring theme in my life, right? Like I had to grow up fast in several moments. So it wasn't anything new, but this was a lot, you know, to go from kind of living at my mom's house to living on my own, paying rent, paying car insurance, paying gas. You know, if I didn't have money, I didn't eat, that kind of stuff. So
it's like reality was moving very quickly for you.
Yeah, definitely. So that happened halfway through my senior year in high school.
How long did you work at McDonald's?
I got hired in January of 2010 and I left February 2011, so a little over a year.
Okay, so it sustained you for a while. And I'm assuming that you were about to graduate at this point. You had already graduated.
I graduated the summer of 2010. So I'm graduating, and at that point, I still hadn't even picked out a college. A couple months before I graduated high school, some guy shows up in our classroom, and it's this guy from the Miami International University of Art and Design. It actually doesn't even exist anymore. It's around the corner from here. It used to be in the Omni building on 15th Street and Biscayne Boulevard here in Miami. And they had an audio engineering program, and I thought music was cool. And at the time, I had kind of experimented with making beats and that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'll do that, because I didn't have a plan for my life after college. So my original plan was actually to be a lawyer. And funny enough, on my high school ring, if you see it, there's like, I know you can't see it, but there's a little hammer.
Yeah.
A little gavel.
Justice system.
But the only reason, again, from watching the gangster movies, I was like, I can't like kill people and deal drugs and
them at the same time.
No, exactly. So I was like, you know what? The lawyers seem like they're making good money, so I'll just, I'll defend those guys in court. That was the original plan. So after high school, like I said, that guy shows up at high school for the MIU or whatever. And that's what I decided to do, just because it kind of seemed convenient. And I felt that I didn't feel the need to go to college, but everybody else was going to college. So I was like, all right, I guess that's what I should be doing, I want to say the fall of 2010, I'm really alone at this point. I never see my mother. I don't know where my sister was living at that point. I barely talked to my father.
Where was your father around this time?
That's a great question. He actually came back into the picture after my stepfather went to prison and we went through a foreclosure. he was actually pretty supportive at that time. Like him and my mom were on speaking terms, which did not happen often, and they're not speaking to this day. But there was moments in time where they were speaking to each other and that kind of stuff. I remember my grandfather came back into the picture at this point. Both my grandfathers are a heavy influence in my life. My mother's father came back into the picture at this time. He started coming around and being a little more supportive and kind of like taking me to his house every once in a while. My father, during the whole process of the foreclosure and all that, started coming back around, gave my mom a car that she could hold on to and use. He started coming back around at that time. And then when I ended up moving out and I moved into his sister's efficiency, he was, okay. He actually had just gotten arrested. He got caught. He got ratted on because he was actually getting paid to sit on a grow house in Homestead. And he got popped. And I remember going to court, like he had been in jail for like 4 months because of my father's just not very educated. He doesn't handle these things very well. Somebody finally got him a lawyer. I don't know who. And they got him out that same day as soon as he was in Metro West. It's a jail. If you've done time in jail in Miami, you know where that is. So
I have no idea where that is.
Don't worry. You don't need to know. So yeah, seeing him go through, I dare to say that was my first experience going to like a court, seeing somebody kind of go through a legal proceeding, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I never saw my dad in jail. I saw him right after he got out. But yeah, that was my first time kind of like dealing with, I had heard stories of people getting arrested here and there. The only other time I saw my stepfather in handcuffs in like a prison jumpsuit in jail and in court when that whole thing happened.
Being in these environments and witnessing these things happen, did you ever feel a sense of fear or confusion, or what kind of emotions would that provoke in you? Being in those environments and witnessing that.
You know,
or were you just calm and you found it interesting?
You know, a part of me was very intrigued in a strange way. Like, I found it was almost like a new world that I had never really thought about or knew. I mean, I knew people went to jail when they broke the law and all that, but I didn't know how it worked. Mm-hmm. So walking into a courtroom, seeing my stepfather in handcuffs, it was almost like a sense of respect for him in a weird way, because he was willing to risk his freedom to kind of get ahead in life, mm-hmm. which is a stupid way to think about it at first, because you can not risk your freedom and do things legally and work really hard. And
it's a unique perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's the other side to it, which you're putting your life at risk, and, it's detrimental to your family members and eventually to yourself also, because you're going to rot in prison.
Right. And then at some point, it's kind of cool because you're willing to risk your freedom to kind of get ahead and this kind of stuff. But what about the responsibility of your family members? You know,
what cost?
Yeah. And now having a personal experience with the federal government has infinite resources. You're never going to beat them.
Never.
So, it's very naive of a person to think like, yeah, I'll beat him. Like, no.
So at this point, you experienced all this. You saw, family members in prison, in court. When did you get your first job after McDonald's? After you attended the school, the audio school?
Yeah. So I ended up dropping out of that school after my first semester, because I was like, bro, not for you. College is not for me, bro. What am I doing? I actually ended up, so what happened was...
Did you find it boring?
I just never wanted to go to college in the first place. Okay. I honestly only did it because other people did it.
Okay.
I never
have a passion.
No. I honestly only went because other people went, and it was kind of what was the correct thing to do. So what really made me change my trajectory in life and kind of like make a decision like, okay, this is the direction I want to go in, was I found sales for the first time. And what happened was, towards the end of that year, I was working at McDonald's in the fall. I want to say like October of 2010. I'm I just turned 18 years old 2 months earlier, just graduated high school. I was flat broke, very lonely, didn't really have many people around me to kind of guide me, tell me what to do in life. And at that point, I was actually an atheist. You remember how I told you kind of like the bitterness caught up with me? Right after kind of...
What made you become an atheist, though? Just life experiences?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the stuff that happened with my great-grandmother and my stepfather, like all that stuff, the foreclosures.
Your belief system.
It didn't at first. What really made me impact, what made everything impact my beliefs was the effect it had on my mother. My mother was mentally deteriorating at that point, and then I had to receive the brunt of like most of her emotions because
nobody else was around.
Kind of. So, and I have a ton of stories about that. That's like, but yeah, I would say it was the effect of it on my mother and her kind of like reaction to kind of take it out on me,
Okay.
So
you were atheist at the time, and
yeah. I was like, talk to me about God, bro. God, what are you guys talking about? Get out of here. And at that point, in October of 2010, I remember I used to drive this big white van. It used to be a mail van. It had cages on the windows. Yeah.
Pretty scary.
No. It looks like a mail van if you pull up anywhere.
Okay.
There's a funny story that in high school, guys, they were joking. They would be like, "Oh, Nelson drives the bang bus." It's really
That's what it sounds like. As a woman, you think it's like it sounds predatory.
It wasn't. It was actually a car with 30,000 miles on it that my grandfather bought for me for like $1,300. So anyway, I'm in this mail van. Oh, no air conditioning with the summer heat. You can imagine, right? Like
totally
miserable existence, flat broke, lonely. A couple of my friends called me to go play pool with them at a pool hall, and I get there first. So I'm parked outside. It's late at night, by the way, because that's the only time I ever had to do anything. It was after a shift at work. So it's maybe 10 o'clock at night, and I'm looking up, and it's one of those rare nights in Miami where you can see the stars. So I'm sitting on the roof of my car, just staring at the sky, and I was just like, man, is this really like all I have in life? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is this what I have to look forward to? This sucks. This is bullshit, And at that point, I kind of realized, well, maybe God is punishing me because I don't believe in him. And that made me just sit there and not even think anything for 10 minutes. I remember my mind being just after having that thought. And then I said something really funny, and I said it out loud. I was like, look, Allah, Buddha, God, I don't know what to call you. If this is a punishment, I'm sorry. I don't know why these things happened in my life. I kind of blamed you, but maybe I had some part in it. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't even need you to give me anything. Just help me figure this out, and I'll take it from there. 2 weeks later, one of my best friends from high school, I don't know if you ever had that friend when you were a kid that you guys would always talk about, like, what you're going to do when you grow up. Like, I want to live in this neighborhood. I want to buy this car. And I'm going to retire my mom. Me and him would always, like, dream build like that. Mm-hmm. And my friend Johnny, he lives in Colorado now. And he basically came to me. He's like, look at this. What do you think this is? And it was basically an opportunity to become a salesperson for a company. And we kind of, before I found that we would always talk about how we like wearing suits and we like wearing nice clothes. And he's like, bro, we get to wear suits every day. And like,
that's cute.
And up until that point, I only knew a job, like as an income source. I only knew that you show up somewhere for a paycheck, they pay you for your time, and you leave. It wasn't up until this point that I start finding out about other ways to make money in life in general. You can open a company, become an entrepreneur, start some sort of business. You can become an investor, make your money, putting your money to work. Mm-hmm. Or you can sell something for somebody, become a salesman. And that concept was so amazing to me that I can take something that a company gives me, go sell it, and they give me a cut of the profit. It was really cool. And I said, wow. So I get paid, $500 if I do this. So if I sell 4 in a day, that's $2,000 I make in one day. And like, I started playing with the numbers, and I was like, man, this is amazing. So long story short, that environment was very good for me. I was around people making a lot of money, people who were just like me, that were kids, that were broke, and a few years later were millionaires. They made a lot of money. They gave me a lot of books to read, a lot of seminars to go to, a lot of kind of like...
What company was this?
This was a company based out of North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, it was called All Communications Networks, ACN.
Nice.
I think they're still there. I don't know if they're still around.
So at this point, you're enjoying your career experience with them.
Yeah. I mean,
And you're
and it's the polar opposite of high school. Like I have make really good friendships, have great relationships, mentors for the first time in my life. May start making good money, learn skills. The skills is...
At any moment, did you think, wow, that prayer worked?
Of course. Immediately, the first day I found it, of course, yeah. Before I even started, I said, wow, this is it, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, it was...
So after there, how long were you at this telecommunications company?
5 years.
That's a great amount of years.
Yeah.
So
5 years actively, and then 2 more years, but very inactive at that point.
What is it that led you to leave?
So the leader of that organization, at least our leader here in Florida, he basically was what inspired the whole team and kind of kept us together. And it was his example that kind of... You have to lead by example.
Yes.
Right? So if you don't lead by example, people do what you do. They don't do what you say.
Exactly.
He started not doing the things that got him to where he eventually got to. You know, he made all...
Lazy?
Not lazy, but he had a bit of a substance abuse problem. That became obvious once he got with like a certain person, and she also had a substance abuse problem. And then things fell apart from there. I mean, I had built a pretty big team. We had, on my team alone, I must have had something like 600 sales agents and maybe 6,000 customers.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very impressionable.
Thank you.
Wow. How did you manage that? How did you hire them? How did you recruit them?
Same way somebody recruited me. I mean, basically, you go out there, you get customers.
Present the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
you leave because it all falls apart. Your leadership is they're not at their best abilities.
Mm-hmm.
When you left, did you have something already in place, or you just left and had nothing?
Right before I left...
Did you have money saved also?
No,
Okay.
I didn't,
So
unfortunately.
at this point, you're spending frivolously.
Yeah. I learned about financial management on the way.
Okay.
So basically, along the way, I saw the writing on the wall, and I went and got a regular job, which was the last thing I wanted to do. When you go from working for yourself, making enough money to live and like live a decent lifestyle, and I wasn't rich, but you know, I got by and I did good. When you go from that to having to work for somebody, you're miserable.
Yes.
My soul was sucked out of me. It was terrible.
Where did you go?
I went to a company called Simply Healthcare Plans.
Okay.
It's a health insurance company.
Okay.
They deal in Medicare Advantage, which...
I'm familiar with them.
Yeah.
Because I worked in healthcare.
Yeah. So $15 an hour, working 8 to 5.
Miserable.
The typical like I call them
9 to 5.
Yeah, I call them 99%ers, like typical 99% of the population who just does just enough to get paid, and you know, just enough not to get fired, and the company pays them just enough to keep coming back every 2 weeks. You know, like minimal effort, minimal requirements for everything, no aspirations in life. You know, lottery mentality. Oh, I gotta hit the lottery. That's the only way my life will ever get better. You know, and it wasn't too much of a positive environment. I didn't like it at all. I was miserable there.
When you left the telecommunications company, did you already have Simply lined up? Or did you go a period of time without making
No,
any
I
income?
right before all that fell apart, I was already working there. So,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay. So tell me about your experience there.
Yeah, I wasn't, I mean, so
What was your role, first of all? Sales?
no. I worked in what was called member services, customer service, basically. So what happened was my habits spilled over. So I was still hardworking. I still did the best I could. I still put forth the best effort. I still did a lot of overtime. So my habits that I had built up in the sales business, in the sales industry, spilled over. And because of that, I actually moved up pretty fast. In spite of not really wanting to be there, I said, I'm going to make the best of the situation, this and that. People started liking me. I started moving up. And within 6 months of being there, I had a pretty cool position where I didn't really have to like being on customer service and taking phone calls was seen as like the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
And I didn't have to do that very fast. Like I moved out of that and I was handling other things. I was given pretty cool positions where I didn't have to do much. I was given privilege because
Your skills.
yeah, my skills, and I had gotten recognition amongst the higher ups. So what ends up happening is I start making some of the higher ups look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them kind of decide that it's time that I, you know,
They put a pause.
yeah, they put a pause on my meteoric rise. And then I start feeling resentful and I start getting lazy and I start not trying and I get caught a couple of times at work doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. Nothing major, but like slacking off and that kind of stuff. Maybe saying a remark about another coworker. And that, after I got reprimanded for that and I got put back on the phones is when I got really pissed. I was like, all right, these motherfuckers. Which pretty much that whole time I was doing fraud that whole time.
How
pretty
are you
much.
doing fraud?
So what happened was that kind of like that resentfulness and that not wanting to be there had left a really bad taste in my mouth. And again, the bitterness caught up with me again, right? That ego of like, oh, I should be doing better in life. What the fuck? Like all that kind of stuff. And I get approached by somebody who has these connections at these clinics, at these physical therapy
Where did you meet
clinics.
this person?
I met him through somebody, through a friend that
Okay.
that lived in like Central Hialeah, that area. And yeah, he just approached me. At first, he thought, I don't know what he thought, but I called him. My friend was like, what I was really looking for real was actual physical therapy. Like he saw that I was complaining about my shoulder.
Oh, okay, so that's where the connection is.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I told my friend that my shoulder was a little messed up. I had just started lifting weights and that kind of stuff. And she was like, look, I don't know if this guy can help you, but hit him up. You know, he's got like massage therapy clinics and maybe he can help you. I said, all right. So I called the guy and he was acting super shady, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't be very clear about, and I'm over here just trying to go to a clinic to get some physical therapy because we had great insurance. We had Blue Cross Blue Shield. We had PPO, which is like the best insurance you can get. Whatever. He basically tells me to go fly a kite. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I don't get the physical therapy. Maybe 6 months later, he calls me out of the blue, out of nowhere. It was super random. Hello? Hey, bro. All in Spanish. The guy doesn't speak English. Super, super Cuban, bro. Like when I tell you super Cuban, you have no idea. He spoke.
Flag number 2.
Hey, what are you saying? All Cubans are criminals, bro?
Red
See?
flag number 1 has a clinic.
All right. Fair enough. Funny. I'll tell you a super quick funny story. 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So a group of Cubans are together in prison.
Yeah.
It's me and like 3 other Cubans, and a Puerto Rican passes by us and he goes, "Smells like fraud." Because all Cubans in federal prison did fraud. Like 95% of the Cubans.
Absolutely.
It was so funny. Oh my God.
That is
He just
hilarious.
smells like fraud.
Yeah,
And
that's
imagine he did it in Spanish. He's like, huele a fraude. Bro, all of us were dying. If you saw us, it was so funny. Anyway,
That's a good story.
we'll go back to that. So anyway, so the Cuban guy hits me up.
Well, they do fraud or something with drugs.
Mostly
family
on the
members
federal level, it's mostly fraud.
Okay.
As far as Cubans in Miami and all that, it's mostly fraud on the federal level.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we'll get
He
to my.
calls you.
He calls me. This guy calls me. Hey, bro, what's up? You know, you still want to go? Let's do this. You know, I'll pay you. And I was like, oh, you'll pay me? Okay, cool. Where do I go? Send me an address. You know, mind you, I don't put 2 and 2 together. I don't realize like, wait. This guy doesn't own a clinic, but he owns a clinic, and he wants to pay me to go to the clinic. So I'm just like, but I'm super confused. I'm just like, whatever. I hear money. Oh, and I'm broke at this time. I have no money.
Okay.
So for me, it was like, oh, okay, let's do this, you know? So I go in there and I sign some papers. I wait in the waiting room. It's empty. There's no one there. There was one other guy, and he left. And then I'm sitting there, and then the doctor's assistant or whatever gives me a bunch of papers, takes a copy of my driver's license, my insurance card. He says, listen, bro, you know, the doctor's not here. We'll give you a call back so you can come back. I said, okay, cool. So I leave. I go back to work. Mind you, I had done this on my lunch break at work. I go back to work. I finished work that day. the guy calls me. He's like, "Hey, bro, where you at?" "No, I'm leaving work." "All right, yo, I'm gonna send you an address. This is where I live. Come to my house." The guy hands me $800 cash.
That same day that you went to his house,
Yeah,
just for signing up to his clinic.
yeah, just for signing papers.
Okay, and at this point, did you ask him anything like, "What is this for?
Nope.
What's gonna happen after here?"
Nope.
You just accepted the
At
money
that
and
point, I knew better. At that point, I was like, "Shut the fuck up. Don't ask questions." You know.
let it happen.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you left that day.
No, well, before I left that day, he inquires because just like a good fraudster, you know,
More business.
he sees where there's money to be made, right, and more scams to be had. And so he says, "Wait a second, where do you work?" "Oh, I work." "Oh, so everybody that works with you has insurance like you?" I said, "Yeah." "Whoa, bro, you send them this way, you know, we'll be happy to take care of you." So at first I was like, "Oh, I'll send them a couple people, you know. I don't see the big deal. I'm not gonna get in trouble. It's not like it's federally illegal, right?" So I sent
Well,
him.
you made it a corporation.
We'll get into that. So I sent him one, then I sent him three, then I sent him 10, and before you know it, $100,000.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's what you had made, $100,000.
I can't tell you how much I made over time, and I can't tell you how much I made total, but I can tell you that at some point in cash during the first run, because there's two phases of this, from I want to say from the beginning of 2017 until March of 2018 was my first run at the in the fraud ring.
Approximately, what do you think the average was that you acquired?
I could make per person. I could make anywhere between $500 and $2,000. It just kind of depended on the.
So in total, what would you say you made? Maybe 300,000.
That's tough. So I had two runs. During the first run from January of 2017, maybe late 2016 to March of 2018, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars run through my hands in cash money. How much I kept and how much, because remember,
You didn't really track it in any way.
no.
Okay.
I thought that was very stupid of me to do. So
Yeah.
I didn't do that. So what I did there was the guy would pay me, you know, and then I would work out a deal with the patient that went to the clinic, and I'd keep some of the money and I'd give them some of the money. And it varied from person to person. So how much I kept over time, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
I think it's astounding because let's say 200,000 that you kept.
Mm-hmm.
For the government, that's a small amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a penny for them,
Right.
you know? So, do you think that you were incarcerated because of your action or because of the actual money?
I think the case overall, and we'll get to that in a second, I think the case overall was so egregious that they had to arrest anybody that was involved.
Okay.
It was just so egregious and so outrageous that they couldn't, even if you had dipped a pinky in that pond, you were going down.
Okay.
And I see that now because my attitude for a long time was like, bro, I was small fish. You didn't need me. Because by the time that the government caught up with me, they had everybody already. They didn't need me.
Right.
They didn't need any more information.
Like, I think sometimes, well, no, I'm pretty sure that they also arrest the people because they don't know who you could become also because you got away with it. You were into that whole scheme. And it's like, well, this person has the resources to become that one day also.
It could be. And it could also just be that it makes the case tighter. You know, if they do end up closing the case as a whole and getting everybody that was in the case involved, like in prison, then the case can finally be closed. If they find out there's another loose end, you know, I get it.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, they didn't have to arrest me. Like,
maybe they just needed workers and
probably, yeah. I mean,
we need to hire some employees.
Yeah, the prison industry is very
We're
profitable.
gonna get into that, but
Yeah.
okay. So at this point,
So
you
March,
start the business,
so
you start bringing a lot of people
from late 2016, early 2017 until March of 2018. Again, I can't tell you how much I made, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars were generated.
Okay.
Yeah, I made a lot of money. And why March of 2018 is an important date is because that day something interesting happened that had never happened before. I call this guy, call my plug, and he doesn't answer the phone. That never happens. Never happens. Never. Because I've made this guy, Lord knows how much money I've made this guy. Because if I was making money, he was probably making twice as much money as me. Because mind you, just like a typical scammer.
1,000% he was.
Just like a good scammer, right? Just like a good scammer and a good con artist. He had his hand in every scam you can imagine.
Right.
So if I was making 100 grand, this guy must have been making millions and millions of dollars with all the different fraudulent businesses he had going. So anyway, he doesn't answer the phone, and that never happens because when I call him, it's about money. So immediately I said, oof, this isn't good. He's not answering the phone. He always answers the phone. On the second ring, this guy always answers the phone. I tried calling him several times throughout that day. Doesn't answer. Mind you, he was on the hook for me. He was on the hook with me for $5,000. So he owed me money. So I was already like, okay.
He's trying to not pay me.
He's trying not pay me. I know where he lives. Let me go pick up some of the guys from Carroll City. Tune this guy up. I'm already mentally prepared. I'm like, oh, this guy thinks I'm an idiot. This guy thinks I'm some dumbass off the street. I'm already.
In your wildest dreams, it could be anything.
No. I knew something was off, but I was like, bro, this guy probably, because there had been situations in the past where he was like, bro, give me 2 days to pay you. Bro, give me 4 days to pay you.
Okay.
But he always communicated it and he always paid me.
Okay.
Right? That's why at first I was like, bro, if he didn't have the money, he couldn't pay me. Maybe this time he has no way of coming up with the money because he was like very hand to mouth. You know, I had seen him make $25,000 in a day and be broke that same day, have no money. He was wild guy.
Insane.
So for me, that was the first thing that came to mind. I was just like, bro, all right, he's trying not to pay me. He probably blew all my money. All right, I'm going to call my stepbrother. I'm going to call some of the guys from the old hood and I'm going to fuck this guy up. Like there was no hesitation. I was like, and if the cops show up, I'll just tell him that, you know, he tried, I don't know. I'll make some shit up. Obviously, I'm not going to say why we did it, but...
Yeah, you would improvise.
Yeah. You know, I was ready. I had money at that time, so I was ready to pay each... I was like, yo, you want to make $1,000? All right, we got to go beat the fuck out of somebody right now. No question. Like, I was ready. I was going to make the call. Bro.
Very Tony Montana.
I mean, that's when I took the gangster stuff too far, right?
Yeah.
So... but look at how God works, right?
Yeah.
Right when I'm literally about to make the call, I'm already looking for the contacts in my phone. I get a phone call from this lady named Maria. Maria is a former associate of his that I had met in passing and was also into her own thing, just doing it on another side with him. And I never really cared to find out what they were doing, but they were probably doing something similar that me and him were doing. She calls me and she knew my name and everything, which was very strange. She says, hey, bro, what's up? Hey, listen, we got to talk. We got to see each other right now. Where are you? I was like, all right, well, let's meet here. I give her a place to meet. But like North Bay Village. She pops out of the car. She greets me. She's like, hey, the FBI kicked down this guy's door today. He's in prison. So
wow,
this is over. You know, I don't know what else to tell you. And I said, all right, well, cool. That's the end of that, right? Never did it occur to me that it would ever blow back on me for whatever reason. Because I wasn't like the owner of the clinic or whatever. So I said,
but in that moment, what were your thoughts? You just said, okay,
I thought,
accepted it and that's it?
I was like, if I was meant to get arrested, we would have gotten arrested together. So
Okay.
I got lucky.
Okay.
And let me just walk away from this and I can go live my life. Like I'm 20, how old am I at this? I'm 26 at this point. I'm young. I have money. Like I have the rest of I'm up.
Yeah.
Like let me quit while I'm ahead. So I kind of stopped for a short while.
And you found someone else to do it?
No. So what happens is, out of courtesy, I knew some of the other guys, some of the clinic owners that did business with this guy. And out of a courtesy, I went and I approached two of these guys and I tell them, you know, I show up there. You know, I call one of the guys, hey, we got to talk. I show up there. We go into this office or, you know, in a back room and I told him, hey, this guy got arrested yesterday. And I told him, yo, this lady told me so whatever you guys figure it out. I came here as a courtesy. And
to get your money.
not only as a the courtesy, that's like the cherry on top, but you guys need to fucking pay me now. And then we basically came to the like they told me what happened, that they had paid him for some of the people before he went away, and you know, they had nothing to do with that, this and that, but they were still willing to pay me for the people that they owed me for, supposedly. And they paid me, and I walked out of there, and that was that. I left that alone. But then I get a phone call from another one of these guys that owns a clinic that had met me in passing. He calls me in. I go him and I tell him what's going on. He's like, listen, I know everything that's going on. Don't worry about it. All that shit. He got arrested for another case. You know, that's his problem. They're not investigating us. Why he would think that, I don't know. It's greed. When greed gets a hold of people, it's like, bro,
completely.
You have no idea.
You have no judgment.
Yeah.
You lose all your discerning abilities.
Yep. So basically what happens now is he approaches me and he's like, listen, Felix is out of the picture. I'll make you a deal. I'll pay you what I was paying him. And immediately I'm like, whoa. Boo, cha-ching. You know, like, because I was making a lot of money before.
Yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah, 100%. Because with that policy, you could get physical therapy twice a year. So all I had to do was approach all the same people that we did that with the year prior.
And do it again.
And do it all over again. And this time I made twice as much money.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
About 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, very short, but this time I was practiced. So it was very, very methodical.
In and out. In and out.
Very methodical, yeah.
So 3 months pass. Why does it end?
It ends because I have a very strong attack of conscience at this point.
Out of nowhere?
No, not out of nowhere. What happened?
Saying one day you're just there, and then
what happens is I get a phone call from a dear friend of mine. To this day, we're still friends. We speak. We were friends. We were coworkers. I saw her every day at work. She sat right next to me at work. Her husband worked with us as well, so I was friends with both of them. I had become friends with their kids. Good people. We talked about religion and life. Like, I'd go to their house and we'd have conversations. Just good people. They call me and they say, hey, you know, earlier that day they had asked me to borrow money. And they had been in tough situations before. Okay. And I had lent them money and they had always paid me back. So, you know, I figured I was just... So I send them the money and they're like, hey, come by later though. We have to tell you something. We just, you know, they didn't even say that. They were just like, yeah, we just want to hang out. I'm like, okay, cool. So what happens is, I go to their house. They sit me down on the balcony and I'm like, hey guys. So I'm expecting just to have a casual conversation. So they sit me down and say, Nelson, the FBI was at our house today.
Wow.
Yeah. The FBI was at our house today. So I don't know. I really don't know. Like, it was just like, for it to be that close to me was a problem. Was a real problem at that point. Like,
because now at this point, I'm sure you're thinking they're very hands-on in this case. And they've been watching me for a while.
At this point, what basically happens is she tells me they showed up at her house and questioned her about the whole case. They didn't bring up my name and they didn't show a picture of me. So up until that point, they didn't know who I was. But, like, it was only a matter of time, right? At that point. So the fact that I the fact that I was the reason that the FBI showed up at somebody's house was what immediately made me think, all right, you need to stop doing this now. Mm-hmm. You're causing serious issues for other people. It's fucking embarrassing and you should be ashamed of yourself, right? And this is over. Like, that's it. You couldn't have paid me enough money to do it again. It was done.
So that was the day you determined to walk away from it?
Yeah.
After that interaction with her?
Yeah. I don't remember what specific day, but I'm pretty sure it was June of 2018.
Okay.
So that's when I stopped. And then once I stopped and I kind of had a second to get away from all that.
You communicated that to that gentleman that recruited you to do that? You said,
No,
hey, I'm
no.
not going to do this anymore.
No.
Oh, you just
No,
stopped.
no, no,
Okay.
no. I had a phone that I used to use to communicate with him. I turned it off and I sent it to Cuba. That's it. There was
So
no.
you didn't even inform him that you were walking away from the operation?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
No. At that point, I was just, it was for my own safety.
Yeah.
I was 100% sure one of the pictures was some of the people that I knew, you know, even though, you know, whatever. So what happens now is I basically, I walk away, I stop, and then, good. I walk away, and at this point, all the thoughts that should have been going through my head the last year and a half start going through my head. I was like, bro, like,
What
the fuck have I been doing, bro? Like,
Which is
you
what
know?
they call kind of a coming to Jesus moment.
Coming to Jesus, yeah. I guess that's kind of the verbiage you can use. For me, it was just more of a
Your conscience was being cleared.
yeah. I kind of was having a high level view of what I was actually doing with my life at that point,
Right.
because the money is so seductive and so fast that I didn't have time to think about what I was doing. The money was basically being shoved in my face, and I didn't have time to process what I was actually doing. And I realized greed was like this. I don't even know how to describe it.
Addictive.
Greed was like this drug,
What's one of the 7 deadly sins?
right? Greed was literally like
It's a
this
corruption of the mind.
this feeling that like devoured my soul.
It's a virus that's in your mind.
It was bad. And the crazy thing is, have you seen the Hulk? You know how the Hulk says, "Oh, I like it when the anger takes over and I become the Hulk." It was kind of like that. It was strange. Like when I had the money and like I made it so fast and I was living that kind of life, it was just so crippling. I couldn't even. There was no way I could process anything else because the feeling was so good that it was like...
It's a comparison to drugs because it's addictive and it completely takes over your mind, your body, your everything.
Yeah. I would even go as far as to like say it was kind of like it was demonic in a way.
It is.
You know?
It's a 7 deadly sin.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of it. That's why it's a sin, because it's sent to destruct your life. Not initially because the devil is beautiful. It tricks you. It makes you think that everything is fine, but then, you know, it's not.
Right.
It's fine for a while until you start noticing your life going into shambles.
Right.
So
yeah, it was crazy because all those thoughts started coming to me like within 48. It was like a day or two after where I was like, I can't do this anymore, and it was unique. I actually have never shared that in like on camera. It's coming to think about it now and seeing it in retrospect. They always say hindsight is 20/20, right? It was sobering, unique experience. I'm glad I came because it could have gone worse, right? Like it could have gone a million different ways. Like so many things could have happened there. You know, I could have.
You were lucky that they didn't do anything. I mean, you still did get arrested on it, and you know you were incarcerated, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, definitely.
So you walked away. You sent the phone to Cuba. Who did you send the phone to Cuba to?
I don't even know. I just gave it to somebody, and they gave it to somebody in Cuba. Honestly, one of my family members was like, "Oh, can you?" Yeah, pretty much, yeah, something like that.
Okay, so you send the phone to Cuba. Once you send the phone to Cuba, your mind at that moment is, okay, let me get a job. What is the next step in life? What were you thinking after you walked away from that? And what were you doing for money?
Well, at that time, towards the end of 2017, in December of 2017, I actually started up a medical marijuana doctor's office that actually went really well. In the beginning, it didn't do okay, but all of us were kind of like, my partner and I that came together had things going on outside of there. So we weren't really didn't need money. So what happened is that after all that fell apart, I just that was like my day job. That's what I did. That's what I was doing when I wasn't, you know, stealing fraud money. But yeah, I just went back to that because we had started that about 6 months earlier.
Okay.
And it's just what I started doing. And it was like, you know, business as usual. We actually ended up growing that really. It became very successful. It actually grew to have more than 4,000 patients at one point.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it did
How
really
many
well.
years did it take you to acquire that?
We started in December of 2017 all the way up until July of 2021, around there. So, yeah.
So a couple of years, you're running this business, the marijuana business, with your business partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's going well. What happens? What leads to the?
I live my life. I just move on. Years pass by, literally.
What is the moment that you were finally arrested?
Okay.
Because years pass.
Yeah.
And it's incredible that so many years pass. You're thinking, I'm sure, this is a history. This is, a part of my past.
Yeah.
Nobody ever found out. I can finally put this behind me. And then out of nowhere.
Basically. Yeah, that's pretty much
How
what.
did that happen?
So I think it's important to note that throughout those 3 years, there was plenty of moments where I said, fuck, man, they're going to come any day now. I lost sleep. There was nights where I lost sleep.
So it's safe to say that you were paranoid, even though everything
was signaling to the contrary, like no one's coming after you. You'll be fine. You're living a life. You're not a criminal.
It's embedded in your subconscious.
Yeah.
And you were paranoid.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd ask for forgiveness a lot. I'd pray. I became pretty religious at this point.
Okay.
I had gotten what we Cubans call a godfather, un padrino. So, yeah, I had started actively practicing religion for the first time in my life.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very good for me.
And one day, you get a call, you get a knock on your door.
Well, July of 2021 rolls around. The pandemic happens. Obviously, the world is very different and all that. Our business booms.
So you're not in prison yet. So this happened before COVID?
No, I don't go to prison until
After COVID.
2023.
Oh, okay.
I go to prison way later.
Yes.
So basically what happens during COVID is everything goes virtual. No one can be on the street. Everything is work from home. Our business booms because we go from having to do in-person doctor's visits to having to do online or video calls. And our business explodes. We do really well. Start making $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 a day. And things go well, And we actually start drawing out a plan to go public, like an 8-figure strategy. Life is great. Life is really good. I have a stockbroker at this point. Money's multiplying with him. He's calling me every day and be like, yo, we just made another 5,000. Yo, we just made it. Things are going great without me even trying, really, honestly. July of 2021 rolls around. I go on one of my very famed vacations. I will say I spent the money well.
Where did you go, if I may ask?
This time it was to Colombia.
Oh, I'm sure you spent it well.
Yeah. Yeah. But at this time, I don't have any dirty money anymore. Everything's legit.
Right.
The money I'm making is from my marijuana clinic.
Okay.
So I go, and from, my investments and that kind of stuff. So I go to Colombia, July of 2021. I have the time of my life. Everything is dirt cheap over there. Women are like a dime a dozen. We rent this giant mansion. We have all this fun. I go out there with a friend of mine that lives in Orlando now. And I have a great time. I mean, right before I left, I had made more money than I had ever made in 1 month, legitimately, in my entire life. At that point, I was making more money than I was when I was doing fraud.
What's the most you made in a month?
Combined between my investments and the marijuana company, probably like $50,000, $60,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Make good money. And then I get back. I fly back to Miami on a Monday. This is like July 20 something. And TSA pulls me aside. They're like, hey, listen, wait right there. And they're letting everybody get off the flight. And mind you, this is a TSA agent dressed in like plain clothes. I didn't even know that they did that. It was really strange. So me and my friend, they pull us aside. They're letting everybody off the flight. We look at each other like, bro, what is this? I had never gotten pulled aside by TSA my entire life in immigration when I was getting back into the country, ever. So they pull me aside and they start, hey, what's up? What's your name, Nelson? Where you coming from? Medellin. Why'd you go there for vacation? Who'd you go with? I went with him. How many days were you there? 5 days. And these stupid, redundant questions. And after like 30 minutes of asking us questions, they say, all right, man, we're gonna take you in this room. We're gonna pat you down. We're gonna look through your stuff. If everything checks out, you can leave. They took us in the room. They pat us down. They check all our stuff. They keep us there for like half an hour. And then they let us go. I'm thinking, that was really strange. Like, why did that happen? I couldn't put two. Mind you, this is like
3 years.
3 years after I did all that fraud. So, no way am I thinking, if they wanted to arrest me, they would have arrested me.
Right.
The only thing I can think of is that right before my arrest, maybe they were looking for something else to pin on me. They were like, he's coming back from Colombia. Maybe he's got some drugs on him. Who knows?
Right. They were doing a random check.
I don't think it was random. I think the feds. I think the feds were like, "Yo,
absolutely." But in that moment, it's one normally would think this is a random check. I'm just one of the dime a dozens that they choose.
At that time, that's what I thought, 100%, because there was nothing else. Yeah. Because at that,
I got away with this already. Like, I'm not gonna worry about that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It didn't even pop up into my head because it was so long ago. It wasn't even something that registered. So anyway. I go home that night. That's a Monday. And I go back to living my life. I go to work the next day. Life is great. I just got back from an awesome vacation in Colombia. I have a bank account full of money. I have a plan that's going to make me a millionaire in the next 18 to 24 months. I'm on the road. I have everything a man wants. I have money. I have women hitting. Like, I'm like, bro, stop calling me. I have women calling me all the time. I have a plan for my life. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I have everything a man could want. Everything I thought a man could want. Until that Thursday. That Thursday, July 31st. How many days are in July? 30? 30.
31.
I remember it was the last day of July. So it has to be July 31st. July 31st, 2021. I get a phone call at 5 in the morning. 5 in the morning. Phone number I don't recognize. So I turn off my ringer and I go back to sleep. Fuck is calling me at 5 in the morning. I get a knock at my door.
So they call you one time and then they know.
I open the door. It's my aunt. My aunt is my landlord. She's like, La policía está afuera. The cops are outside and they're looking for you. The cops are outside and looking for me. What are you talking about, bro? The cops. Mind you, my first instinct is, oh my God, my father. This has happened in the past because we have the same name. His credit got tied to mine and just people have came looking for me, looking for my father before.
Okay.
So that's what was my first instinct. Mind you, the whole thing with my dad getting arrested 10 years earlier. So he had to, So I'm thinking, they're looking for my dad. I'll let them take me to the station and we'll clear this up later.
Right.
I get another phone call from the same phone number. This time I said, all right, I should maybe answer this. Hello? Nelson Rodriguez? Yes. This is agent such and such with the FBI. You have 5 minutes to come outside. Click.
Oh my God. I have the chills.
So I get dressed.
You're still thinking it's your father, something for your father?
Yeah, at that point. So I get dressed. I'm wearing like basketball shorts. I'm wearing sandals. I'm wearing slides.
Yeah, you were sleeping.
I'm wearing a booby trap t-shirt. For those of you that don't know, Booby Trap is a strip club in Miami. I walk outside. City of Miami cruisers have the whole street blocked off on this side. 4 City of Miami cruisers, which with I don't know how many City of Miami cops. 4 City of Miami cruisers have the street blocked off on this side with I don't know how many cops. 4 undercover FBI agent cars outside of my house with 8 FBI agents pointing AR-15s at my face.
Major light show.
No, it was... And then to boot, a Channel 7 news van covering the whole incident. Like, which...
Incredible.
By the way...
No, tremendo show.
The only way the news van would know about it is if somebody called them and said, hey, somebody's getting arrested.
Yeah.
So, I have the video. I'll show you the video of me getting arrested. I actually have it. It's kind of cool.
Don't you ever think these people are like, they get a kick out of this? Because they're like, we need to, make it a show.
Yeah, we got to make it a show. We got to embarrass this guy.
Do you want to, you want footage on somebody being arrested?
Yeah, of course.
Come on over.
Of course. So the FBI agent approaches the gate because we have a gate in our house. That's the only reason they had to call me, because they couldn't come in my house. So he approaches the gate. My aunt opens the gate. I hand her. I don't ask questions. This is right after George Floyd. So tensions were very high in the country.
Yep.
Very high.
Yep.
So I said, fuck every single one of you. You are not going to kill me. Period. I'm not going to give it, So I hand my cell phone to my aunt. I text my business partner really fast. Yo, I'm getting arrested. I don't know what's going on. I'll call you when I get out. I hand my cell phone to my aunt and I tell her, call my parents. And before that guy even says anything, I'm backing up, putting my hands up. One of the agents approaches my aunt. This is my card. We're taking him into custody. If anybody has questions, they can call me. Yeah, I was shitting my pants at that point.
Yeah.
I was in fear for my life.
Yeah.
I was just making sure I didn't die.
Right.
So I was like, just don't do anything stupid. And,
It'll be fine.
let them take you. And in the back of my head, I'm like, bro, what am I, Osama bin Laden? Like, this is the kind of stuff you do when, like, you're after a serious criminal. This is a joke.
At what point, though, did it finally hit you and you say, I could I'm possibly being arrested now because of what I did 3 years ago?
So,
You didn't think of that at that moment? No? Okay.
So what happens is I get arrested. I let them take me. They don't even read me my Miranda rights. Nothing.
Yeah, they don't care.
And I don't even ask questions. I'm just like, take me, whatever. They take me to the FBI headquarters in Miramar, not far from here. I'm sitting in this big kind of warehouse kind of looking place, handcuffed. Mind you, this is during the pandemic, so like we all have our things on.
Yes.
And I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm not even worried. At that point, I'm not worried. I'm like, oh, we'll clear this up in a few minutes. This is bullshit. The first guy walks in and I was like, okay, I don't recognize that guy that got arrested. All right, whatever. The second guy walks in and I'm like,
Because you recognized him. What a moment.
yep. That's exactly what happened. As soon as the guy walked in, I just saw him and I said, wow, this bullshit.
And they were all arrested the same time that you were.
This group of people, yes. In my case, there was about 7 or 8 of us. So yeah, at this time, we all get arrested at the same time.
Incredible.
And then once I start seeing people, that's it.
Why do you think they waited all that time, though?
They blame COVID.
Oh, okay.
They blame the pandemic, that it shut the government gets shut down and they didn't work for I don't know how many, So they dragged me into this room and the FBI tries to interrogate me and they're like, oh, Nelson Rodriguez, we've been following you around for months. And I said, you must have been fucking bored, my brother, because all I do is go to the gym and go to work.
And he was like, yes, we were bored.
Yeah. But anyway, so basically they take me to the U.S. Marshals Holding Center, which is in the same building as the Federal Courthouse of the Southern District in downtown Miami. It's on Miami Avenue and 4th Street. So the FBI pulls into this tunnel, kind of like almost under the building. The U.S. Marshals come out. They hand custody. They basically hand me off to the U.S. Marshals. The U.S. Marshals fingerprint all of us, take pictures, mugshots. And then they put us in a holding cell. I have to admit, being processed by a U.S. Marshal, I was just like, bro, what is going on? Do you know what the U.S. Marshals is? Do you know what they do?
No.
So for those of you that don't know, the U.S. Marshals go after fugitives. That's their job. Like they go after guys on the run.
Okay.
So the same guys that had me in custody were the same guys who went after like El Chapo or like stuff like that.
Serious stuff.
So I'm sitting. They take the cuffs off your hands, but they keep them on your feet for whatever reason. So they put me in the cell with all the other guys, and I'm just sitting there. And the only image that could come to my mind was my mother. My mother just sobbing, crying, being worried about me. How like I disappointed her, like how she couldn't believe that I did this and all this stuff. And I couldn't even sleep. That was the torturous part. That day felt like a year. It took forever. And that wasn't even my mom's initial reaction. But for whatever reason, that was just like what came to mind.
How do you know what her initial reaction was?
She told me later.
What was her reaction?
She thought that my partner in the marijuana business had done something illegal and he pinned it on me.
Oh.
Because again, I've never gotten in trouble. So
typically Cuban moms would think like their son would never do anything.
yeah. No, but in her defense, I literally legitimately had never gotten arrested in my entire life.
Yeah.
I never gotten anything past a traffic stop, you know.
So you go to prison, they have you in there, you spend the night
Go to
there.
jail.
You go to jail.
There's a difference.
Yeah. You spend the night in jail. Once you're there, you wake up in the morning and they
don't keep me overnight.
Oh, okay.
They arrest us really early. This is why they do this to you. In case you bond out the same day, they want you there the whole fucking day.
Oh, okay.
So you really, you know? So they arrested me at 5 a.m. And that whole thing, FBI headquarters downtown. By the time I get to downtown Miami, it's maybe 8 a.m, 7:30, something like that.
Okay.
So they hold us the whole day. We don't get a virtual court appearance. They were doing it virtually back then. We get a virtual court appearance. Somebody had already gotten me a lawyer. My partner, actually, later I found out it was my partner in the marijuana business, had already gotten me a lawyer. And they bought me out the same day. They did what's called a promissory note bond, where you don't have to put any money. A promissory note is just they sign off saying if he flees the country, you're on the hook to the U.S. government for $100,000.
Right.
Which, I mean, I had no priors. It wasn't a violent offense. I was the bottom of the totem pole in the case. So, you know, it is what it is.
Okay.
Like, they weren't going to keep me.
Right. And then you go back home?
Yeah. So my partner in the marijuana company picks me up. Mm-hmm. Just to show you how much of a clown he can be sometimes. He shows up in a scooter. You know that those birds or whatever those are called? He shows up with his COVID mask so nobody sees his face, with his hat on. And he's like, all right, let's go. I'm like, let's go. This dumbass. So I get on a scooter. I have to ride the scooter with this fucking guy 5 blocks away to his car.
That is humorous.
We hop in his car, and I'm just like, bro, please just take me to go eat something.
So
I was
did have the car, but it was parked several
blocks away. Yeah. So I just begged. I was like, please take me somewhere to eat. I'm just so hungry. The first place we could find was like a Popeyes in Alapata or something. And we stopped at a Popeyes. I stuffed my face. It was like the best tasting chicken sandwich I ever had in my life. And then he drops me off at my house. I walk in. My aunt and her wife, she's married to a woman. Okay. My aunt and her wife were just like super worried. They were just super happy I was home. They asked me what was going to happen. I told them I had no idea. I'll figure it out tomorrow. I think I called my mother at that point. I don't remember. I don't think I did. I remember now. I just went straight to sleep. And it was early too. It was maybe 7 o'clock at night. It wasn't even that late. And I just said, I'll deal with this shit tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm sure you were exhausted. You hadn't slept all night also.
Yeah.
Did your mom come see you at any point after?
My mom showed up in Miami 2 days later.
Okay.
Yeah, because she lives in Louisiana, her and my sister.
So this process then starts. Is there a trial?
Right. So what happens initially is my lawyer basically asked for a meeting, right? Obviously, like, you know, I go to his house. Not his house, I'm sorry. I go to his office like the very next day or maybe the day after. My mom and my sister, I don't know what happened with flights back then that they were backed up. So what they ended up deciding to do is they drove to Miami from Louisiana. It took them like 13 hours to get here. They get here. They pick me up. And it was good that it was 48 hours because that middle day, you know, I called my godfather basically that morning. You know, you know what's up. You know you're Cuban. So I called him. He saw what was up. We took care of what we had to take care of. And then the next day, my mom, my sister, my grandfather come with me to see my lawyer. And they basically, you know, they ask him questions. What's he facing? Oh, he's facing 5 years. Worst case scenario, but we have to look at the discovery, see what they have on him, figure this out. And that was that. He basically gave us the rundown, you know. I paid my partner back because he paid him a deposit. It was $30,000 for the lawyer.
Okay.
Every dollar I had and more.
Not that you were going to need it now, but.
I mean, yeah. Then one of the stipulations of the case was I was banned from working in healthcare for the rest of my life. So I couldn't work in the field I had worked so hard to like be a part of.
Either way, you really didn't enjoy it. It wasn't so fulfilling to you. So, you're not missing much out there. But so finally, first of all, tell us, what is the difference between jail and prison?
So jail is where you go when you get initially arrested for anything, whether it's on the federal level or on the on the more local level. If you're getting like a DUI or you get it
where they take you first, and then after the sentence,
once you get sentenced, you go to prison.
Okay,
and that's very different from jail.
Okay,
prison is where you're going when you know you're going to be there a while. Jail is where you get taken kind of like, all right, we're figuring out what to do with this guy. Yeah. So, yeah, very different. I like to make that distinction for everybody. When they're like, oh, you went to jail. No, I went to prison. I didn't go to jail.
Yeah, major difference.
I spent 1 day in jail.
Yeah. So when they tell you your sentence and they say you have X amount.
Well, that takes a while because, I mean, yeah, I got arrested in July of 2021 and I don't get sentenced until October of 2022. So I'm out on bond a while because they're figuring out there's people who want to go to trial and all this other bullshit. Just some legal proceedings that happen.
And during this time, you're still doing your business and your business?
No. So one of my stipulations in my case is I'm banned from working in healthcare for the rest of my life. The marijuana business is healthcare related. Okay. So I'm banned from working in my own company overnight.
Okay.
I have to spend every dollar I have on my lawyer and go flat broke. My partner, I meet up with him. That's another meeting I have after basically everything happens. I was like, look, bro, obviously I can't be associated with the company. I can't do anything here. So you got to sell it, give me my half, and we go our ways, and we'll figure this out later. Yeah. So he ends up selling the company and gives me nothing. So I lose the company. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in.
Have anything in writing?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my mistake.
Right.
So I lose the company. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in. Right. And I lose everything I had. Remember how I told you I had everything I thought a man wants?
Right.
I had a realization, like, if you can lose things that quickly and that easily, then...
What is truly important? Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So it made me really think, like, what do I want for my life? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might go to prison, but whatever. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but, what do I want?
So you go to prison. They finally...
Not yet. Yeah, okay. I'm out for a year and a half.
Okay.
So it takes a while for all that to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are you doing every day at this point?
For the first 2 weeks, I locked myself in my house and I watched cartoons all day. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was super ashamed, super embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I just didn't want to talk to anybody. And then eventually I was like, bro, you got to get out of the house. I know all this shit is happening, but like you got to live your life. Mm-hmm. So basically I decide that, if I die, there's no proof I was ever here. So I was like, man, I got to do something meaningful. Like, I got to do something with my life. So that's when I decided to write my book. And it was good for me. It was very therapeutic. It came out, I wrote it pretty fast. I started writing it in September of 2021, published it in March of 2022. That came out.
It's pretty quick.
Yeah. It came out.
And it's basically about your life and...
Up until that point, yeah. Up until that point, basically. So... Basically, I write the book. That goes really well. I do a launch party in May of 2022. And I make a couple $1,000s that night. And I said, wow, maybe I have a future in this. I don't know. I don't know what this is, but this could be cool. Mm-hmm. And then I tried to think of like a whole way, which actually, funny enough, I actually got screwed out of that money by the owner of the place the venue, because she had agreed to change, we basically agreed that I'd pay her a percentage of my ticket sales, and she did it out of 100 people. And later she was like, oh, if it's less people, we'll change it to however many people shows up. Turns out she didn't change it. So I had to pay her ticket sales I never even got. It was fucking, terrible. Yeah. She threatened to call the cops if I didn't pay her, which I'm out on bond. So I'm like, bro, if they call the cops on me, I'm going to jail. So no. So I ended up giving her all the money. Anyway, but regardless of not really making money on that event, I saw a future. I saw like a light at the end of the tunnel. And I said, what can I do to
bring in income?
Yes. Not just bring in income, but what can I do to build a future? Mm-hmm. What can I do to build a life? So I was like, man, I watch Joe Rogan a lot. Me and Joe Rogan have the same birthday, August 11th. I'm a huge fan of his. That's a very me thing. I would love to podcast. It looks really fun. So without hesitation, I go out and buy microphones and I start doing audio only. Just an audio only podcast without a video.
Are you interviewing anyone at this point?
Not yet. I build up to that. It's me and a co-host though. I did start with a co-host.
Okay.
In June of 2022. And I start interviewing people after the first few weeks. It's really fun. And I see myself doing this long term. Towards the end of that year in 2022, I started looking for a studio. And I find a studio that does video. I was inspired by another friend of mine who's actually a podcaster. He showed me the studio where he records, and I decided to start using that place. I had started recording already. And then in October of 2022, I get the news from my lawyer, hey, we have a court date for your sentencing. October 13th, 2022. Pretty sobering day. I thought, I was like, man, I might go to prison today. You know?
Is that the day that they shared the news with you?
That's the day I got sentenced, but that's not the day I had to go to prison. Okay. Yeah.
So you already knew that you were going to do a couple of months?
No, that's another thing. That's why I was pretty disappointed, and I'm still pretty disappointed with my lawyer. He misled me, thinking that there was a possibility that I wasn't going to prison, and I was going to prison. Did you know that the federal government has a 98% conviction rate?
No.
Neither did I. Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's not common knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Do you think it would be predatory to kind of like not tell someone that if they've never been? Yeah, it's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, all lawyers do that. You know what percentage of people in the federal system are first-time offenders?
What?
Like at least half of them.
Wow.
Many people I did time with were first-time offenders. So the federal system is very predatory. There's many things wrong with
Very
it.
rigged.
It's evil. It really is. It's like basically a machine to keep feeding itself, and it's disgusting.
Well, it's modern slavery also.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I'm going into it not being that whole time. That whole year and a half was torture because I didn't know. Not knowing is what killed me. Once I knew, it was. So anyway, I get into suit and tie that morning. I get suited up to go to court. And my grandfather and my mother are the only ones who come with me to court. Mind you, my grandfather is 80, turning 81. He's at this point, his heart is giving out. He's not doing well with his health. But he would have died. Like if he had to die to come with me to court, he would have died.
Yes.
You know?
It's your grandfather.
Yeah. And he was, I remember we passed through the metal detectors and he had to sit down because we had to help him walk from how out of breath he was. He sits down, and then the U.S. Marshal looks at him like, bro, do you want me to call somebody? He's like, listen, I'm going to die here. Don't call nobody. I have to be here, you know? So we go up together. We wait outside the courtroom. Of course, federal courts think they're the most important fucking people on the planet, and they make you wait, and nobody else matters and all that shit. But anyway, they make us wait outside for a while. We go inside. The judge throws down the gavel, 8 months in federal prison.
8 months.
8 months. My first initial reaction is that I was very angry with my lawyer. Very angry. Because again, he misled me. He made me think that there was a possibility I wasn't going. But then after a while, I was relieved because I was like, all right, I know. I know I'm going.
And it's not even a year.
Yeah. Something like that. So, yeah, I start immediately. Luckily, I got allowed to self-surrender, which is you pick a date where you show up at the prison. You don't have to get transferred, which is a nightmare. So that's what happened. I picked a date after the holidays because it was October. I asked if I could spend the holidays with my family, and then, you know, I'd show up at whatever my facility is, and I'd go there. So immediately I started thinking, but man, I started podcasting. It'd be cool if I could keep this going, you know? And what I end up doing is I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this like keep running while I'm away. I'm gonna set it up to where like episodes and clips will premiere while I'm away, so that way I have some sort of momentum or traction when I get back.
Right.
So that's what I did. From October to December of 2022, I recorded as many episodes as I could. And I spent the very first week of January, I was supposed to self-surrender January 9th of 2023. What happens there is, that's actually my sister's birthday. So for her 32nd birthday, it was to drop off her baby brother to serve his prison sentence, which sucked. But anyway, the week I was about to go in, I scheduled all the podcasts to premiere, and then off to prison I went.
And then they just started premiering.
While I was gone. So if you didn't have my number,
Premiering them
it was all automated.
oh,
It was all automated. I scheduled it all.
on YouTube.
YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff. Yeah, Instagram. It was all automated.
That's a great strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you getting traction?
I didn't know because I didn't want to look at it until I got back.
Right.
And you're not, everybody knows there's no cell phones in prison,
Yeah.
We'll get into the prison stories in a second.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, that's what happened. Like, I got dropped off. My sister and my mom looking at me, the door closed,
Then that's it. A totally different life.
You're handed scraps for clothes. You walk into this room, a prison guard strip search you.
Did you have your own cell?
No, I had a
Who were
cellmate.
your cellmates?
At first, I was alone, but then you get a cellmate later. Yeah.
Who was your cellmate?
Angel Jimenez Candelario. They called him Jack Sparrow
Wow. Why? Why is that?
because he was kind of like a pirate. He was kind of like always digging for treasure.
Oh, he sounds very interesting.
He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met.
Okay.
He's a very very
What
good
was he in
person.
prison for?
He was a lookout for a drug spot, and
Okay.
he got ratted on.
Okay.
So yeah, he got like a 7-year sentence.
So now you're in prison, and the realization has set in. This is my home for the next 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
How does your psychology function around this new dynamic, this new reality, and what does your day-to-day look like?
Well, the first day I got there, after they give you the prison clothes, they strip search you. They all right, go inside. One of the guys was nice enough to go introduce me to the other Cubans. Meet the other Cubans. They kind of you show up with nothing, so kind of like everybody looks out for their own kind in there a little bit. Out of a prison of 500 prisoners, there was maybe 14 Cubans. We don't have many prisoners in like at the camp level in the federal system, because later I found out you have to be a U.S. citizen to be in a camp. So most of the Cubans are stuck in the low, in like the higher level security prisons. But anyway, I get there. One Cuban gives me a pair of shoes. Another one gives me some shorts. Another one gives me some notebooks to write in because I'm a writer. And yeah, that night, I basically have almost everything I need. One guy gave me some toothpaste. One guy gave me a toothbrush. And I go in to take a shower. You hear everything about the prison showers, the prison stories, right? So I'm extra paranoid. I'm like, yo, I'm ready to die in this motherfucker. I'm like, bro, let somebody. But a camp in the federal system is not like that. You have like individual stalls. Everybody's respectful. You don't have any weird shit going on. Unless that's kind of what you want. That's there.
Yeah.
But it's consensual.
Yeah.
Anyway, which is not what I was looking for. So I'm taking a shower and I hear, Kuwa! I'm the only Cuban in the whole unit. So I'm like, oh, here we go. I look back and it's this guy named Melo. Melo has a fucking scorpion tattooed on the side of his face. So real guy, real gangster.
Yeah.
He's like, bro, ponte la chancleta. Because I had taken off my slides, my shower slides, and put them at the end of the stall. And then I walked in barefoot. And they're like, bro, you could get like fungus on your feet. It's nasty.
Yeah,
Even though they did a pretty good job at cleaning the place. Like they put Clorox every morning and stuff. Guys do pretty. You're like a woman I have a lot of respect for. So I'm not going to describe the things that men do in those showers. So anyway. So yeah, like he yelled, put them on. I put them on. I go out. I go to my cell to start drying myself off. And he comes over and he's like, bro, you could get fungus on your feet, bro. Are you crazy? Have you ever done time? And I was like, bro, no.
That guy was Cuban also?
No, Puerto Rican.
Okay.
But, they kind of, they were cool with us. Yeah.
Right.
So the Cubans come over and they're like, hey, what's wrong with you, bro? I'm like, bro, I've never been to prison. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. You want to die here, bro? So I got the message, wear your slides when you shower.
So, you have all these things because of the other prison mates. They don't provide these basic necessities.
No. When you get there, they give you like a bar of soap, but it's very bad quality.
What shoes do people wear in there? Because
They give you what they kind of look like Vans, but they're unbearable. You know what unbearable is? You cannot walk in those shoes.
Okay.
You can't. You can't walk. I walked from the intake to the cell block, and it was like unbearable. My feet were on fire. So luckily, one of the first things I got from one of the Cubans there was a pair of shoes. Thank God.
So you start noticing that you're getting support from your other cellmates. Was that pretty much the entire time, or did you ever experience conflict with other prison mates?
No one at a prison camp, for the most part, everybody's trying to go home. So no real conflict arises. Every once in a while, you catch someone, like a couple guys fighting it out in the bathroom, or some guys will get into an argument. But for the most part, everybody wants to go home and no one wants to get in trouble. Okay. So for the most part.
So what does your day-to-day look like at this point? I'm sure you're writing a lot.
Yeah. I kept a journal, which I'm actually going to turn into a book soon.
Nice. Okay.
I'm writing 3-4 times a day. I work out often. Okay. At my height, I'm working out 3 times a day.
Do you have, because I know that sometimes I read
100 pages of a book every single day.
Excellent. So you needed prison. You needed prison to shift your mindset.
In retrospect,
your philosophies on life. And
in retrospect, earlier I had mentioned that version of me was gonna die. I was gonna leave him in prison. I was determined to leave him in prison because I wasn't gonna go back there.
What was the worst day that you experienced in prison that you remember was your absolute worst day?
Oof, this is a good one. So we were on our way back from work. You get assigned jobs. And of course, because I was the grunt, I had just gotten there, they stick me with the worst job, which is at this place called Unicor. Unicor is a prison corporation that makes clothes, furniture, different things. And on the prison level, they basically get prisoners to work. It's slave labor, and they pay you anywhere between 12 cents to $1 an hour. It's very, 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 very depressing. But anyway, after spending the whole day there, being forced to spend the whole day there, I'm walking back. And as I'm being walked back, as we're walking back to our units, there's these prison guards waiting for us. And I was like, okay, all right, you. They just point at me, and they're like, you, stand here. And basically, they search us. Like, the chick was like, even like grabbing my nuts and all that. I'm like, bro, what the fuck is going on here? And that day, it was pretty bad. Like, we got locked down. We got locked in. Like, we couldn't get out.
But what was the reason?
They don't have to tell you.
Oh, okay. They wanted to, so.
I'm sure there was a reason, but they don't have to communicate it.
Right.
They don't have to tell you.
Right.
Safety. They'll tell you, oh, safety.
Okay. Okay.
It made me, like, there was moments in there where I would realize, like, I would almost forget I was in prison because you make friends and you kind of have a routine and you
have a sense of harmony.
You almost forget where you are. Almost for a second, you forget where you are, but you get reminded. So anyway, every time I almost got to that point, like, the guards would tear there was times where they'd lock us in, they'd tear all our shit apart. One day, it was one of the really bad days, was we got forced out of all of our units by these guys called SIS. They're basically the SWAT team, and they're the cops in prison, basically. They come in, they search the entire unit for hours. They made us stay outside forever, which was cool because we played sports and we entertained ourselves outside. We go inside, and then everybody's stuff is just destroyed, bro. Destroyed. You want to talk about feeling violated?
Yes.
Like dog shit. There was this one prison guard. We were in Coleman, Florida. That's 45 minutes west of Orlando. It's like in a forest in the middle of nowhere. He had gotten a bunch of pig shit, bunch of hog shit, and spread it all over somebody's bed, bro.
Who did that?
A guard.
No way.
Because the guy, like, apparently said some smart, slick shit to him or something. Like, yeah.
That's very cruel punishment. I mean, that really takes the cake.
And it's funny because I wasn't in like a high security prison, but a lot of the guys that were with me there had worked their way down. They came from penitentiaries. They came from mediums.
Which is worse.
Right. And they would tell me, it's so funny that they treat us like that here, because if you go to the low or the medium or anything higher, they're like super respectful. They're scared of us almost because they know they'll get killed.
Interesting.
They'll get killed. Prison guards will get killed in high security prisons if they disrespect prisoners.
Interesting. Even though they're the ones that have the weapon.
prisoners, if a prisoner has 20 years or life, that's their fucking house.
Yeah,
You're not going to walk in there and disrespect them. They will fucking kill you.
Yes.
I have to, this is not happening. What are you going to throw me in solitary? Give me another charge? I'm already in here for life.
Right.
So it's funny how now they come to the little boys, the guys who are trying to stay out of trouble and go home. Now you want to act like a tough guy.
Right. It's abusive.
Yeah, 100%.
What was the best day in prison?
Probably when I got my release date.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was no day that you were in there that you had some kind of epiphany or you had some kind of...
I had several.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would consider those to be very good days.
They were. Yeah.
Or maybe you just formed a bond with someone particular that made your days that much better.
I'll tell you about a couple. I mean, I had my neighbor that was in the cell next to me. His name's Eddie. He's out now. I'm going to have him on the podcast soon.
Okay.
He actually gets off house arrest in April.
What did Eddie do?
Eddie got a 30-year sentence. He went to trial, was found guilty, got a 30-year sentence for drug smuggling.
He completed his 30 years?
He ended up getting out in 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
16 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eddie had read the Torah, the Quran, the Bible. He had read every religious text that exists.
He sounds like he's acquired a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. We sat down.
As long as he applies it. That's all that matters.
Me and him sat down and had some very, very interesting conversations.
And when you were incarcerated, what did you find yourself praying for the most?
I didn't need to pray.
You wouldn't have conversations with God?
No, I felt God. I felt his presence. Like there was these picnic tables under this giant tree right by a little religious area that was out in this open field. I'm very grateful that we were in the middle of nowhere because there was a lot of nature. There was grass, there was trees, there was wind.
Connect. There's no distraction.
There was turkeys walking in the distance, hogs, animals. Sometimes you could see deer. It was so refreshing to be out in nature, especially towards the end of winter, like April in the springtime. That place was so good. It was so nice.
Because that is what God is. It's nature.
So I would sit at that picnic table for half an hour, and I would just look out at the field. It was very refreshing. Being away
you never
from...
had to pray. You never prayed while you were in there and you said, God, when I come out of here, No? Okay.
No, because I felt him.
Right. So you would just thank him?
Yeah, I'd be grateful because I reconnected with a side of my being that I had lost. Like, I had reconnected with my imagination. I rediscovered what imagining things was. I rediscovered writing like I hadn't written with my hand in how many years.
New life.
With these basic things that humans should be doing every day that will connect you with the grand scheme of things, the divinity of life, right? But I had to go to prison to be reconnected with those things. So it made sense.
Distracted.
Yeah.
And what emotion did you feel the most while in prison? Was it anger, frustration, or were you truly at peace?
I was pretty at peace the whole time, with the exception of maybe my first week and a couple times here and there where the guards do certain things to make you feel a certain way, but I'd snap myself out of it. I made good friends. I'm really good friends with my friend G. We became best friends in there. That changed, I would argue it changed the trajectory of my life. I met Ross in there.
Yeah. How was it that you met these people in there? I mean, obviously you guys have lunch together and, work out or, but what was the common denominator or what made you guys connect so well that you're like, these are my friends moving forward?
So my second day there, I'm in line at commissary and I hear a really familiar voice and I'm like, bro, there's no way that's Jose Batista. There's no way that's his voice. And I look over and it's Jose Batista. I walk over and I'm like, bro.
Who is Jose Batista?
He was my coworker at Simply Healthcare Plans.
Wow.
So he gets convicted on a separate case from mine, but for something similar. And he ends up at the same prison. He had been there a few months prior to me. So basically what happens is he's like, oh, yeah, come over to my cell. I'll introduce you to the guys. So that night I go to his room and I meet G and I meet Ross and I meet some cool guys. I meet Gio. What's up, Gio? Geomatrix. He was our chef, our prison chef. He's still probably a badass chef in there.
At this point, how many months have you been in prison already?
That was my second day.
Wow, your second. Okay, so these are friends that you met
Very
right
early
upon
on.
arrival.
Right.
So you were able to hang out and get closer to them as months progressed.
About a month later is when we really start hanging out and becoming really good friends. Yeah. Ross actually gets shipped home. He gets sent home like a month into my bid. So he leaves pretty early. But me and G become really good friends over time. I actually request to get transferred to his unit, and we become really good friends. We work out together twice a day. I do yoga with him, lift weights. We borrow books from each other to read.
And at this point, when you and Ross, because now you're in raw media, and but he leaves, how do you guys determine? I mean, you stay in contact, or
G stays in contact with him after we get out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
And then
how.
you guys devise the plan to create a media company.
That comes later after I get out. Yeah,
Okay.
that comes later. So I get the news that I'm getting out because you really don't know when you're getting out. The maximum I could have done was 8 months, but you're probably going to get out earlier. So anyway, I get out May 25th, which, there's still so much, even in those short 5 months, there's so much like.
So you did 5 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 months.
Okay.
I read 31 books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. In all this that you lived and everything that you observed in prison, everything that, your mind could possibly capture, what is one thing that you think that the system could improve in these prisons? I know there's a long list.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah.
There's so much.
What is the main thing?
The main thing I would say is just give a fuck about these people, man. No one cares. Everyone's there to cash a paycheck. No one wants to do any work. The prison system is not about rehabilitation at all. If they actually cared about these people, they would put programs in there that would actually help them when they got out. They would do things to help these people, not to hinder them. They do some sort of mental health check when you hire prison guards. Like, these guys are insane. They're egomaniacs.
Yes.
They do things to literally belittle people and give themselves a rise or give themselves some sort of power because they are powerless and they're losers. Most of them are overweight. Most of them have horrible personal lives. Most of them are not good husbands. Most of them are not good people.
Yeah, they're pretty evil themselves.
And then the problem is, like, there are good prison guards. There are good people in there. But they're so overshadowed by the ones with the power, and there's so many other people who just kind of want to make a paycheck that they don't get a say. You know what I mean? They don't really get.
So you think just having more human decency?
I think so.
Okay.
Start there.
And when you're experiencing this also, what did you miss the most? What did you crave the most when you were in prison?
It's funny. That's like the longest I had gone in a long time without having sex. So
Connection to a woman.
I realized, but emotional connection, not physical connection. I realized physical connection with women was just kind of like another thing to distract me. I really, really craved emotional intimacy with women.
Wow, so you had a huge awakening in that aspect also.
Yeah, 100%.
And what food did you miss the most?
Cuban food for sure.
Yeah.
Cuban food.
I mean, it is one of the best,
Yeah.
Well, and from here on out, what do you want to dedicate your life to?
Well, podcasting is definitely seems like the vehicle, right? I mean, I got out. Some clips had gone viral, right? That was pretty cool. So I realized I needed to keep doing my thing. But at this point, the seed was already planted. Like, I had seen all these stories I had told you about. So I said, yeah, I'm going to keep podcasting, but I have to bring these stories out into the world, So that's when the initial seed for Honor Among Thieves got planted, after getting out.
And you're doing extremely well.
Thank you. So basically what happens at that point is I need to get a job. And then my friend G had gotten out a month earlier. We reconnect. He gets me a job working at this digital marketing agency that was representing Ross Mendel.
There we go. That's how it happened.
That's how it happened.
Okay. And then from there, you guys are evolving. You're growing. But you personally, what would you say is the impact that you want to have with your podcast on humanity or on your audience, your viewers?
I want people to know that redemption is real, and there's real people that have redeemed themselves on this planet.
That's the message right there. Is there anything else that you want your audience to know? Is there anything else that part of your journey and part of your life that you want to share with your audience?
There's I don't know where this is gonna take me, but this is only the beginning.
I actually see that big time. And I know it's gonna make amazing changes in people's lives. It's gonna awaken a lot of people and possibly even direct them in the right way before they make a very bad choice in life. So Nelson, what is next for you?
Well, Honor Among Thieves is just getting started, so I see massive. When I tell you massive potential, massive potential. I've become good friends with Ian Bick, and he's been a source of inspiration and a mentor to me. And the things he's done with his podcast are like really inspirational and a good example for kind of a little bit of the direction I wanna take, but obviously with my own taste and my own style. But yeah, I see it like I have really good ideas and really good plans for Honor Among Thieves, so it's gonna be big.
And how do you want to be remembered?
As someone who redeemed himself.
Do you believe in redemption?
I do.
Do you think that the reason why you believe in redemption is because what you experienced?
Yeah, I've seen firsthand many people who have done much worse things than I did, and in my eyes, they were redeemed.
And do you feel you are redeemed?
Not yet. One day soon.
Thank you for having me, and I loved interviewing you. You have an incredible story, and I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you.
You're welcome.